Hey guys, let's talk about Allied victory in Europe and the Pacific. When we say the Pacific, it means a region of the Pacific Ocean, like all those islands and things over there. That's what, anytime anyone ever tells you, it says anything about the Pacific, that's what they mean is, how about I just open up a map and show you? Let me make it smaller. Okay, so Pacific. Usually if someone says, I went to an island in the Pacific, they're talking about this region right here. Remember the other day when I zoomed in, and there are lots of islands in here. Okay, let's go back. Victory in Europe and the Pacific. All right, so by March of 1945, Americans and other Allied forces had crossed the Rhine River. The Rhine River runs right along this border. So it separates Netherlands, Belgium, France from Germany. Allies had crossed over from the west here, and Stalin's soldiers from the Soviet Union had gone into the east, and so his soldiers were marching this way. British and French and Belgium and Netherlands and American soldiers were marching this way, and by late April, they met each other and shook hands with each other. So, yay, we've destroyed Germany. Then also at the same time that was happening, at the same time, we had Allied soldiers coming this way and Allied soldiers coming this way, conquering Japan. Resistance fighters in Italy found Mussolini and assassinated him. So now, or executed him. Now, Mussolini is dead. Germany is taken over. On April 30th, it was completely obvious that Germany was going to lose this. They're not coming back. April 30th, Adolf Hitler shot himself in the head. He committed suicide. On May 7th, so about a week later, Germany officially surrendered. May 8th is called VE Day. This is Victory in Europe Day. Really important date, May 8th, Victory in Europe date, Victory in Europe Day. It's also important just for your own personal knowledge. Make sure and know that Hitler killed himself. That's how he did it. So, March, Allies invaded Germany and they're closing in. By April, they had taken over Germany. By the end of April, Hitler didn't see any way out, gave up, killed himself. A week later, the government of Germany, the remaining government of Germany, because Hitler was the top, they officially surrendered. The very next day is VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. So now it's been 12 years since Hitler took power. Since Hitler took power, I'm not going to write it all out, it takes too long. It's been 12 years since Hitler took power. And do you remember how Hitler got power? Because he talked about his Third Reich, and his Third Reich was going to dominate Europe for 1,000 years. Well, he made it 12. And what were some of the reasons that the Allies were able to win? Like, why is that? Because if we all remember from 1939 to 1942, it sure looked like the Axis power was going to win. It really, really looked like Hitler and Mussolini and the Japanese were going to take over and they were going to win. How did the Allies, how were they able to come back? Well, one part was, remember what Stalin always wanted was another front open. The Germans were fighting everywhere. So their army was broken up, fighting everywhere. They were having to break up their massive army and send them all over the place. Also, Hitler didn't really know that much about leading an army and didn't make the best decisions. I want you to always remember this, you guys, because of the class of people that you are, the class of your family, you will likely be a boss one day. You'll probably be a boss one day. And when you are the boss, take into consideration the things that you're just not necessarily the best at, and go to the people that are really good at it and ask them for help. I mean, I'm not the very, very best at everything. I like to believe I'm the best at everything, but I know I'm not. There are some things that Mr. Givens is just better at. So I let him do those things. So Hitler, he wouldn't do that. Everything had to be his decision to make. He had to give all the instructions and all the rules and tell everybody what to do. But he made a bunch of really bad decisions just because he didn't really know what he was doing. So when you are a boss, like, look to the people around you. Maybe it will be one of your employees that has a really good idea. Listen to them. He didn't do that, and it cost him the war. Another reason, this is reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. Another reason is because there was no real fighting on US soil. There was no fighting in the United States. Remember, Germany has been destroyed by bombs. England has been destroyed by bombs. There's war and destruction all over Europe. But the United States, they're still going strong. There haven't been any bombs dropped. Everybody's fine. All the US factories are still going. All the US women are still there to work. And everything's still producing. And this is part of that. By 1944, the United States alone was producing twice as much product as all the other allies put together. All the allies put together. If you doubled that, that's what the US alone was producing. And number 4 kind of ties in, I just covered this, but Germany had been bombed to crap. The Allies had been bombing Germany. Like, they could barely even fly their airplanes anymore because they didn't have any fuel for their airplanes. I mean, Germany was destroyed. How are they supposed to be fighting a war when their nation is destroyed? Okay, so Germany is out. Italy is out. Now the Allies can focus completely on the Pacific. They can focus, turn everything on the Pacific now because Germany's gone. Italy's gone. Now we're looking at Japan. I'm gonna go back a little bit and remind you that in 1942, Japan controlled almost all of this. And let me zoom in so you guys can see. If I keep zooming, look at all these islands. There's so many islands in here. I can't, it's difficult with the screen, but do you see all these islands all over the place? So Japan had taken control of all these islands. And there was a big battle. I mean, not a big battle, a big thing that happened here in the Philippines. In the Philippines, when Japan took over the Philippines, they were especially cruel to the Filipinos, that's people that lived in the Philippines, and Allied soldiers. They did this thing called the Bataan Death March. They made when Japan conquered them, they took their prisoners of war, those are called POW, prisoner of war, and conquered American soldiers who also were prisoners of war. Anyway, they made them march from one prison to another prison, something like 35 kilometers, and they didn't let them stop. They just had to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. No food, no water. They would like beat them and torture them along the way. The soldiers would randomly just kill a prisoner. And in this one march, there are estimates that up to maybe 20,000 people died. That's called the Bataan Death March, and it's really, really famous from World War II. And that was in the Philippines. And funny, people from the Philippines are called Filipino. Yes, I spelled that correctly. If you're from the Philippines, it's spelled with a PH, but people from the Philippines are called Filipino, and that's spelled with an F. I could explain that to you why, but it takes a really long time. Just remember, people from the Philippines, the name of the country is spelled with a PH. People from the Philippines are called Filipino, and that's spelled with an F. Okay. Now, after the battles of Midway and the Coral Sea, that's when the Allies started coming back. And they started doing this thing called island hopping. Like I'm drawing these are tiny little islands. And the Allies started, let's say they started down here, they would go from this island and liberate it, to this island and liberate it, to this island and liberate it, to this island and liberate it. And they were making their way up to Japan. They didn't get every single one. Some of them they left in Japanese control, but they were hopping. It's called island hopping. They were island hopping their way up to Japan. And when they made it to Japan, an American named Douglas MacArthur, general, he was General Douglas MacArthur pushed the Allies into Japan. The Japanese during this time, they were fierce fighters. A Japanese soldier would not give up. He would fight to the death. They even did this thing called kamikaze. Kamikaze was when a Japanese guy flying an airplane would crash his airplane into an allied airship. So there's a ship. When I say airstrip, I mean airship. They had these really, really long ships. This is a ship in the ocean. And they had these really, really long strips on them. So an airplane could actually land on the ship in the middle of the ocean. And an airplane could take off from a ship in the middle of the ocean. That's what this is. That's what this ship is for. And kamikaze fighters were, I'm going to make this into an airplane. He would go and bomb into this ship in the ocean. And he, of course, died when he did that. So the Japanese guy in his airplane would go and crash straight into an Allied ship in the ocean. And that's called kamikaze. So at the same time that the Allies were doing their island hopping and liberating some, and they entered into Japan, and they were fighting in the Pacific, there was some research going on in the United States. It was secret research. And the name of this secret research was called the Manhattan Project. It was super, super top secret. And it was scientists working on a bomb. Scientists had recently discovered how to release an amazing amount of energy from an atom. All right, so bear with me for just a second. I'm going to go into science. So if this is an atom, and I could forcibly split this atom, like break it open. Let me, if I could break it open, when I break it open like this, all kinds of energy explodes from it. So exploding energy comes out of the broken atom. And these scientists were trying to find a way to harness, to take that energy and put it in a bomb. And they succeeded. They made the atomic bomb. And while right at the same time that scientists actually figured out how to make splitting atoms into a very dangerous bomb, FDR suddenly died. He had been sick for a little while, but nobody really expected him to die, and just gone, he was dead. Now, his vice president, Harry Truman is now the president President of the United States. Harry Truman is now the President of the United States. And the scientist from the Manhattan Project, so FDR had known about the Manhattan Project, but this thing was so secret that his vice president, Harry Truman, didn't even know about it. So now FDR is dead and Harry Truman gets told about the atomic bomb. And he wanted to show great American power and decides to drop one of these atomic bombs on Japan. So on August 8th, 1945, I even know this date. Sorry, I've got this on August 6th, 1945, America dropped a bomb on Hiroshima. Hiroshima is the name of the city in Japan. August 6th, 1945, an American bomber plane flew over and dropped a bomb on Hiroshima. At least 70,000 people died instantly. Instantly. Like, I mean, not even time to scream. They were just gone. That's how powerful this bomb was. And then over a long, long time, days, weeks, months, years, thousands and thousands and thousands more people died because this kind of bomb releases a poison. And so, I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. That was August 6th. August 8th, 2 days later in 1945, happened to be 90 days after VE Day. So, and what was supposed to happen 90 days after victory in Europe? Yes, the Soviet Union enters the war against Japan. So on August 8th, the Soviet Union declares war on Japan and they went into Manchuria. Remember, Manchuria is that northeastern part of China. And then on August 9th, the day after that, this is 3 days after Hiroshima, 1 day after the Soviets entered Manchuria, the United States drops another bomb on a Japanese city called Nagasaki. Nagasaki. At least 40,000 people died instantly. Instantly. So the United States in 3 days has killed over 100,000 Japanese people. And August 10th, 1945, Japan surrenders. September 2nd, on September 2nd was when an official peace treaty was signed between the United States and Japan. Now I'm giving you an extra assignment. I want you to go to this website right here. So you can find it by saying, I don't know, maybe Google search Howard Zinn, A People's War, and you'll probably find this website right here. Whatever, just look at it. Whatever you have to do through the magic of the internet to find this website, go here. I want you to read this. You can read it, you can understand it, and you might have to read it twice. There might be little sections that you have to read a few times to understand. It's written at a higher level, but I want you to read it, and then I want you to write me at least 3 paragraphs about what you learned and what you think about it. 3 paragraphs is really short. I would like more than 3 paragraphs. In my fantasy world, you would write me an entire 2 pages. But if you turn in 1 paragraph, I'm not going to take it. Read this and then tell me what you learned from it and tell me what you think about that. What you feel about it? What are your personal feelings about what you read after you read this from Howard Zinn? Okay, we're done. The war is over.